What's crappin'? Stop yapping and build some shit. I am Cordell Rufus III. I wanted to do a video today on kind of an update on where the car sits. And to let you guys know, we are doing the final high boost tuning in about 2 hours. So, I wanted to give you guys an update, and then we'll go from there, and then I'll be posting the videos. It looks like we got a... There we go. There's a spider web in front of the camera. So, basically everything on the car went okay. The biggest issue we knew, we noticed with doing the swap was heating, or actually cooling, the car. These two JZs make a shit ton of heat, even at idle. So, using a really good radiator and getting enough air through that radiator was our biggest issue in the beginning. We had a couple little hiccups, but mostly our biggest problem was getting the car to cool itself. Because we couldn't really do any tuning outside of hauling ass on the freeway without getting the car hot. The car would get heat soaked, and then it would just creep, even with the fans blasting. Basically, I decided to go with some fans from a company called DeltaPag, who uses, they make brushless radiator fans. I would not recommend them. The motors that they actually use in their brushless fans are only 50 watts. The Spall brushless fans actually use a 300 watt motor, from what I understand, so they don't get bogged down when you're increasing the static pressure in front of the fan, which is essentially just your radiator. Always use polar fans, but basically what I ended up having to do was I 86 the whole brushless system, which is like $1,000 worth of fans that I'm not using anymore. We took the Mishimoto X-Line radiator out. We added baffles in the end tanks to make it a triple pass, and then I actually removed the AC condenser, which I'll be adding a different one in later, because I do have custom lines already in the car for AC, which I'd like to run AC. And I actually moved the radiator forward about 3.5 to 4 inches, which allowed me to fit much larger fans on the back side of the radiator. So I was able to fit two 12-inch high output Spall fans, which actually draw 40 amps a piece. I think their startup amperage is over 100 amps. So you need to use their harness, which is what you see here. These are twin 60 amp fuses, twin 150 amp relays. And then I have the two 12-inch fans that are literally just, the normal zip tie looking radiator fan mounts. Those two are mounted caddy corner on the radiator. They do overhang on the end tanks about 1.25 inches on each side, but it's the best that we could get. Two 12s. A single 16 wasn't working. A 12-inch fan and a 16-inch fan are two 16-inch fan, or a single 16-inch fan is about the same surface area, if you do the math, as two 12s, actually. But the CFM is obviously increased by a lot. So even though you can run a single 16-inch fan at, say, 2500 CFM with the surface area of, say, I think it's like 215 square inches, somewhere around there. Two 12-inch fans and a 12-inch fan each is going to be about 110-ish, so you're around about 220 cubic square inches. Cubic square inches. Square inches surface area. So the surface area of the two fans are about the same as a single 16, but each one of those 12-inch fans is pulling 1800 CFM, actually 1870 CFM. So you're effectively pulling, almost double, 2/3 of the CFM through the radiator. So once we went to that setup, which still allowed us to use the ECU to actually turn on the fans, because when you go to brushless fans, you can't use the ECU. Most ECUs don't offer a pulsed output for fans. which is what you need for a brushless fan. It's a 3-phase. So on a 12-volt system, we were able to kick the fans on and off with the ECU, which obviously is a lot more controllability in the car. And the car actually cools off under every condition we put at it. Even in, it's been over 100 degrees here in San Diego, and the car cools off pretty fine. Really well. I haven't had any issues at all with overheating ever since we switched to these fans. So I would recommend two 12-inch fans if you're going to put fans on your 2JZ that you have in your car, and then just move the radiator wherever you can to make two 12-inch fans fit, because you're going to need the CFM. From what I read online, you need about 3,300 CFM to really effectively cool these engines. I believe the stock clutch fan on a Supra is around 3,400 CFM. So if you can run anywhere in the 3,500s or whatever, even higher, you're doing pretty well. Another thing you're going to want to do is just make sure you get the air out of the system, which wasn't a big deal on our setup, but what I did end up doing was I added an electric water pump. So I 86 the stock water pump because I just wasn't getting enough flow, and I just wasn't feeling confident with just how the water was moving through the system. So I put an electric water pump on it, which is on its own relay, and so that flows 40 gallons an hour, I think, something like that. 30 or 40 gallons an hour. But what's cool about that is that if the car is warm and the key is on, the fan is running to cool the engine coolant, but the actual water pump is actually still pumping also. So you're able to cool the entire engine with just the key on. If you have obviously a mechanical water pump, you would have to have the engine running to be pumping water through. So you would still be able to cool the water that's in the radiator, but you're not going to be cooling the water that's in the block. So what's really cool about that is, given the fact that this is a ridiculous street car, which we're trying to break 200 mile an hour in the half mile, you can turn the key on if it does get hot or on the hotter side, and it'll literally cool off the entire engine, which is really, really neat. So that was one of our biggest issues we had. Some of the other little stuff we had was just having to remake the power steering lines that we had gotten from Chase Bays. The fittings were, I don't know, some of the fittings weren't even tight. They literally pulled off when I was trying to put the lines on, which is no shit on Chase Bays at all. The products that they put out are really, really well, really, really good. But just little stuff like that, and that is not a big deal. That's a little thing. Some of the big issues we had were the wiring harness, Wiring Specialties plug and pray wiring harness was fucking horrific. There were wires missing out of the harness. The wire that actually powers the harness from the ignition was missing in the harness, so they couldn't have bench tested it. The wires that were going to the intake air temp, the map sensor, and what else? Those weren't, the wires were actually, there was another plug under the intake manifold, and those were actually flipped all over, so those sensors weren't reading right. We had to troubleshoot all that. And then I ended up having to send the entire harness back to them, sent the harness back, then they sent the harness, overnighted it back to me, and then they forgot to ship out my map sensor, so I didn't even have my map sensor so they had to overnight that back out to me again the next day. And then even before that, when they had sent me a patch harness to try to fix my power issue in the beginning, they actually sent it to an address that I haven't lived at in years. That was an address that I guess my mailing list or whatever is registered under, even though I haven't made any orders from them ever from that address. It was just a total clusterfuck dealing with the company. The only positive thing that I have to say about him is that Yuri was very available to talk to me, to try to troubleshoot me through this. I think he was obviously more willing to work with me because I do have a technical background, so I'm not like the average guy who doesn't know anything about wiring. So it wasn't like I'm an idiot and I don't know what any of this shit is. Like, I've made wiring harnesses before. So, let me shut off the light on the camera, starting to flicker. So after we dealt with all that, the car started running fine. And then all the wiring changes I made after that, I made myself. I just didn't even bother involving wiring specialties. It was a huge pain in the ass. We're still waiting on our Driveshaft from Driveshaft Shop. We ordered that through Granis Racing, and there was just a miscommunication. They sent it out with the wrong flange, so I had to send it back. And then, if you've ever worked with Driveshaft Shop, everything takes forever. So it's going on 2 months now, and the Driveshaft should actually be here today, but it'll be here after the dyno appointment. So the Driveshaft that's in it is actually one that I made. It's a hybrid of the stock E36 Driveshaft and a new inch and 5/8 Driveshaft with a 32 spline T56 end on it. So it's held up so far, so I don't think it'll have any issues on the dyno, but we will find out. Speaking of the dyno, the only issue we do foresee possibly having is splitting that intake manifold. That intake manifold, I had originally purchased it because I knew it would fit in here because I've seen other people use it without really realizing that the reason everybody else was using it was because it was a cheaper manifold. I mean, obviously I knew it was a cheaper manifold, but I didn't realize that we would really have issues with it because it is 080 aluminum. I did look at all the welding when I had the throttle body off. It did look like it had good penetration. We are running 30 pounds of boost on this thing right now, and it hasn't split. From what I understood on other people's builds, they were splitting them at like 21, 23 pounds. So we will see if that holds up with 40 pounds of boost. And then obviously... Airflow was a big deal. Also, we ended up getting rid of the trim piece that was back here that I did have on that made it look like really stock. I took that out to allow air to flow through and out the vent of the hood. And then everything else has worked really good. That Granis Racing tranny is fucking awesome. The kit that they use is awesome. I did end up pulling the tranny just to double check and add a little bit more clearance to my tilt and throw out. Which was absolutely no fault of Granis and them. I just, honestly, it was bugging me that I didn't think that I had enough clearance, so I added a little bit. Everything else has been working really well. The car right now should be putting out a little over 800 horsepower. We will find out on there, but I have had James Reese of Reese Tuning. He has been logging in on my laptop from, I think he's in Georgia, and doing a bunch of tuning on it. Just on the freeway out here, so we can only go so fast. But we were able to load up the motor enough to spool this thing to 30 pounds. You can't really get 30 pounds out of it in second gear, definitely not first gear. You're just not loading up the motor enough to get enough air through that turbo, because it is a 7687 and it's got a 4-inch downpipe. But today we will be running the electric cutout wide open. So we'll have a full 4-inch downpipe that comes right out the side of the car right here. The wastegate is a 2.5-inch dump that it's like literally 1.5 feet of tubing, so we shouldn't have any restrictions on the exhaust side. As far as the engine is concerned, we've had no issues with the engine at all. Even the drain plug doesn't have anything on it. We've checked our oil filters every time we've done oil changes. Everything looks really good. Right now we are running Valvoline VR1 Race Oil 2050, the black canisters, the fully synthetic race oil. We are running that right now. So we will see how that oil does. It should be good. For fuel, we are running F&L Performance E85. I think they guarantee 80% ethanol, at least, and the other percentage, which would be 20% if they are running 80% ethanol, is actually a really high quality gasoline. So normally E85 from the pump only guarantees E70, and the other percentage they're using dog shit gasoline, so 87, maybe even less, I don't know. But the Performance E85 is really high quality E85. So we drained the entire fuel tank and put 15 gallons in the tank. We did add a crossover fuel pump because I ran this car out of gas 2 or 3 times now. And it's because the stock Volturi system, which basically creates a siphon and shoves gas over into the passenger side of the tank, you can't really run with this high flow of a fuel system. What was happening was I did have it hooked up and we were getting like 70 psi of fuel pressure when the secondary pump kicked on. And that was because the Volturi system was backing up the system, which it eventually blew off. And then, so there was no Volturi system working at all. So what I did was I just attached an AEM 340 ethanol pump on the driver's side hanger, and where the Volturi line went over, I ran a 3/8 fuel line over that and connected it to the pump. So now that pump is turning on with the key, and it's constantly pumping fuel over into the passenger side of the car. So now you can actually run the car all the way down on the fuel tank, which is nice. So those are all just kind of little things we had to do along the way, but it'll save you some time and headaches getting the things dialed in. And I'll do another video after we get it on the dyno and we see how much power it puts out. It is a hub dyno. We're going to Darden tuned in, I believe it's Santee. It's like right on the edge of Santee and El Cajon by the airport. So I've heard good things about him. I've seen him tune some really nice cars. One of the positives is that it is a hub dyno, which is what I wanted to use for this project. There's lots of people with roller dynos that I could have gone to, but I haven't used a hub dyno yet. And I was really curious to see how it does. Hopefully we don't max out the dyno. I think his dyno is only good to 1,200 foot-pounds, but as long as we ramp the boost in slower, we shouldn't spike the torque on the dyno and error it out. So we will see how it goes. I'll definitely be taking some videos, giving you guys some updates, and we'll, you know, hopefully it's still got rods in it when we get back. So best of luck to me. Pray for me, guys. What's up? So we ended up doing about 1101, I think, what we got to, and 856 foot-pounds on the hub dyno at Darden tuned in Santee. It was a really hot day. We ended up getting some misfires up top, so we're going to drop the plug gaps to 12. They are at 18 thou right now, and we're going to shoot for our 1,200 horsepower mark. Pretty much just chasing the number on the dyno now. The motor can take it. I mean, honestly, the engine is built for 1,800, so it works. We're hardly working the motor, to be honest. And we also got the Driveshaft shop 3-inch chromoly driveshaft in there now, so all that stuff's good to go. And we're going to do a little bit more tuning on a cooler day when we can get the intake air temps down. It was like a 90-degree day, so intake air temps on the top end were probably around 140, which is really hot. And we're running the F&L Performance E85, which is about 80% ethanol, and the other 20% is high-octane fuel. So everything worked really, really well as far as the car was concerned. We were actually invited to Speed Society to do a segment over there. And that was a segment that they call What Will It Make? And it's just you put a car on the dyno and we'll see, everybody kind of has to guess the horsepower that it'll put down. So their shop is really, really nice. So I'll cut to a clip of the dyno that we did there. Well, we're getting the E36 ready to go on the dyno here at Speed. Check that out.
Speed Society in San Diego. Super nice place. The dyno's actually built into the floor, so you can actually drive onto it, which is nice. And we'll see how much power she does. Hopefully around 1200, although I know we're not entirely sure how the dyno will read, which is, you know, typical. But we'll see how much power she does out here at Speed Society in San Diego. It's a really awesome car. They'll be featuring the car in a upcoming video, so I'm excited to see how it comes out. We'll see.
That's the dyno that we did actually today, this morning, over there. So we still have some tuning to do. So we're gonna do, we're probably gonna add a little bit more boost and pull some fuel up top once we get the timing figured out and the plug gap and the misfire figured out. And then we're gonna do a little bit of tuning down low for drivability. But we have, the car is pretty much, I mean, mechanically the car is pretty finished. I have some trays and stuff to add to the front, but basically everything's done on it. So on the next video, hopefully will be a tuning session at Darden again with some cooler intake air temps, and we should be putting up some big numbers. If we need to, we'll crank the boost up to 45, 50 pounds, and we'll throw see if we can max out his dyno, because I think his dyno only goes to 1200 foot-pounds. Which we're nowhere near 1200 foot-pounds, but when you bring the boost on really fast, sometimes it can spike the dynos. So we'll see. So hopefully the next video we'll be putting down some really big numbers down in Darden, at Darden in Santee, and we'll go from there. So hope you guys are enjoying the series. We are planning on hitting the Airstrip Attack event in, I think, November 15th, 16th of this year. So we should be the first BMW to hit 200 mile an hour, which is kind of hilarious considering the package that we have. So, you know, it's a 20-plus-year-old car, and it's just been completely built underneath the body, as far as, you know, subframes and reinforcements, full suspension, drivetrain, diff, you know, everything. So, it'll be really cool to kind of see how the car is, I guess, taken by everyone there. But so far, the reaction from the car community has been really, really good. I mean, obviously being invited to Speed Society for a segment of a video is really, really cool. So, and the car's only been finished for a week, so not even a week, to be honest. So, pretty cool. We're super excited to keep the project going. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll add some more content as we go. Hopefully we can plug some races in here soon this year, and we'll be the first people to go 200 in the half mile in a 1998 BMW E36 M3 with a 2J in it. The Dyslexic Supra. BeastMW.